All right, folks, so we have been working for a couple of days now on factoring. And we know when the instructions say that we are to factor, then our job is to rewrite the polynomial as a multiplication problem. Now, so far, you've learned two methods for doing that. You know that you can factor out a greatest common factor. That was method number one. Yesterday, we learned method number two, which was to factor a difference of two squares. And today, we take a look at method number three. And method number three is to factor trinomials by using the guess and check method. So, I want you to notice first of all that we're going to be factoring trinomials, which means that everything that we factor today is going to have three terms in it. And I want you to notice this method, guess and check. What that means is that this is going to be kind of a trial and error process. So let's just go ahead and dive in, and I'm going to show you what we're talking about. Now, the trinomials that you are going to factor for the next little bit are all going to fit kind of the same form. They're going to have a square term, which I'm going to write as ax squared because there could be a coefficient there, plus bx plus c. So you're going to have an x squared term that could have a coefficient, an x term that could have a coefficient, and then a constant term that doesn't have the variable at all. Now, in today's problems, today, we're going to factor trinomials where a is equal to 1, so where this leading coefficient is 1. So if I made that a 1, then I would have 1x squared plus bx plus c. But we know that if there were a 1 in front of that x squared, they probably would make that invisible. So it's going to be x squared plus bx plus c. So this is the trinomial that we'll factor today. And then as we move through the week, we'll change that coefficient and make it something else. We're going to make A1 today because that will make it easier for you to kind of learn this process. All right, so here is the first trinomial we are going to factor. Let's start with x squared plus 5x plus 6. So x squared plus 5x plus 6 is what we'll begin with. Now, to factor this trinomial, you are going to come down below it and start by putting yourself two sets of parentheses. Each of these parentheses is going to represent one part of your multiplication problem. Now, it's guess and check. So let's start with the guessing part. You're going to start with your first term, x squared, and you're going to think about things you can multiply together to get that x squared. Now, this is why this is going to make this a little easier for us because there's only one way to get an x squared, and that's to multiply x times x. So I'm going to take those x's, and I'm going to put 1 in each set of my parentheses. So for x squared, there is only one way to get that, x times x, so I'm going to put 1 of those x's in each set of my parentheses. All right, so now we come down to the other end of the problem. And what we notice is that at the other end we have a positive 6. So I need to think about things that I can multiply together to get a positive 6. Well, I know I could do 1 times 6, and I know I could do 2 times 3. But those are the only two combinations that would give me a positive 6, either 1 times 6 or 2 times 3. I want you to notice there are no negatives in this problem at all, in this trinomial at all, so chances are I'm not going to need any negatives down here. Now here's where the guessing part comes into play. I'm going to have to guess whether I need to use the 1 and the 6 to complete my multiplication problem, or whether I need to use the 2 and the 3 to complete my multiplication problem. I'm just going to go ahead and take a guess that it's the 1 and the 6, and so I'm going to put a positive 1 in the first set of parentheses and a positive 6 in the other. So I've made my guess. I think that the multiplication problem for this needs to be x plus 1 times x plus 6. All right, now time to do the checking part of this. So to check it, what we're going to do is actually work out this multiplication problem and see if it gives us what we wanted. So we would do x times x, that's x squared. We would do x times 6, which would give us 6x. We would do 1 times x, which is 1x, and we would do 1 times 6, which is 6. Now, we know that we can combine these like terms, so that's going to give us x squared plus 7x plus 6. And what I want you to notice is that the x squared part is right, the plus 6 part is right, but that middle term is wrong. I wanted 5x, I'm getting 7x, so I'm going to have to say on this one, nope, you're wrong. Now, that doesn't mean I give up. Because remember, I had another guess that I could make. So I'm going to come down here now, and again, for my x squared, there was only one way to get it, x times x, so I'm going to put an x in each set of parentheses. And now, for my 6, I know it's not the 1 times 6 option, so I'm going to guess that it's the 2 and the 3. So I'm going to put a positive 2 in my first set of parentheses and a positive 3 in the second. So I want you to notice that that middle term of 5x is not playing a role in this guessing part. We guess for the x squared, we guess for the positive 6. The 5x is what's going to check this and let us know if we got it or not. So now I'm making a guess that this multiplication problem needs to be x plus 2 times x plus 3. So let's check it. So I start with this x and I do x times x, which is x squared. Then I do x times 3, which would be 3x. Then I do 2 times x, which is 2x. And then 2 times 3, which is 6. When I combine my like terms here in the middle, I end up with x squared plus 5x plus 6, which is what I started with. So this is correct. So the factored version of x squared plus 5x plus 6 is x plus 2 times x plus 3. So we guess and then we check it by doing the multiplication problem and seeing if we get what we want. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Okay, let's try another one. This time let's factor x squared plus 10x plus 16. So notice again here I'm keeping everything positive because on these first few I want you to be able to just focus on the process. All right, so let's put down our 2 sets of parentheses. We are going to come up here first of all to our first term, x squared, and we're going to talk about him. What can I multiply to get x squared? Well, there's only one way to do that, an x times an x. So that means in each set of parentheses, I will put an X. It's the only way to get that. Now, my 16 is going to take a little more work because there's more than one way that I can multiply and get a positive 16. I could do 1 times 16. I could do 2 times 8. I could do 4 times 4. So all of those are ways that I could get a positive 16. Now I want to point out something here. If I go back to that example that we just did, I want you to notice that here in the middle, we had a positive 5x. And I want you to notice that the pair of numbers that we ended up using, 2 and 3, if we add 2 plus 3, we're going to get 5. Now, it won't always be that way, but for today, you can use that to kind of guide you. So notice here we want a positive 10x in the middle. So when you look at these combinations that you wrote down over here, which one of those seems most likely to give you the positive 10? Well, if we look at all three pairs of numbers, that 2 times 8 looks like the pair that would be most likely to give you 10x in the middle. So let's make a guess and try this one out. So I'm going to put a positive 2 in this set of parentheses and then a positive 8 in this set of parentheses. So this is my guess. I think that the factored form of this trinomial should be x plus 2 times x plus 8. And now I'm going to check it by doing my multiplication problem. All right, so starting with your x, we're going to do x times x, which is x squared. We're going to do x times 8, which is 8x. Then we move over here to the 2 and we do 2 times x, which would be 2x. And we do 2 times 8, which is 16. Combine your like terms in the middle, 8x plus 2x, and you get x squared plus 10x plus 16, which is correct. So that means that this is my final answer. My guess was correct, and that is the multiplication problem that I should use. All right, so that gives you a couple of examples to get started with. We kept everything positive there. Let's maybe do one more like that, and then we'll add some negatives into this. So this time, let's go with x squared plus 11x plus 30. Get ready for your guess. Put your 2 sets of parentheses down here. And again, we start out with our first term, x squared. There's only one combination that will get that, x times x. So we put an x in each set of parentheses. Now we go to the other end of the problem. We have a positive 30 there. And to get a positive 30, I know I could do 1 times 30. I could do 2 times 15. I could do 3 times 10. I could do 5 times 6. So notice this time I have several combinations that I could choose from. But if I kind of think about it, I'm wanting an 11x. 1 and 30 aren't going to give me 11. 2 and 15, 3 and 10 won't either. This seems most likely to help me get that 11x. So I'm going to try a positive 5 and a positive 6. So this is my guess. X plus 5 times x plus 6 is what I think will get me the right answer. So now I am going to check it. So starting with my x times x gives me that x squared that I want. X times 6 gives me a 6x. 5 times x gives me a 5x. And then 5 times 6 gives me the 30 that I was after. Like terms, 6x plus 5x will make this x squared plus 11x plus 30. That's what I wanted. So that confirms for me that my guess is correct, and that x plus 5 times x plus 6 would be my multiplication problem. Now, I should mention here that if you switched the order there, if you did x plus 6 times x plus 5, that would be perfectly okay. Because one of the things you all learned a long time ago is that multiplication is commutative, that order does not matter. So if I do 2 times 3 and you do 3 times 2, even though that order is different, you and I are going to get the same answer. So it works the same way here. Okay, so that's 3 examples where we had nothing but positive signs. Now that we kind of know what the process looks like, let's put in some negative numbers and show you how that will work. So this time around, let's do x squared minus 13x plus 36. So x squared minus 13x plus 36. Now, here's the deal. When you start to see some negative signs in the problem, what that lets you know is you're going to need some negative numbers down here in your factored problem. So we're going to start out the same way. We're going to come up here to our first term, x squared, and we're going to think about what we can multiply to get that. As in every problem we've done so far, the only way to get that x squared is x times x. So we're going to put an x in each set of parentheses. Now, when we move down to the other end, I want you to notice that we have a positive 36. So for the moment, just think about what you can multiply to get 36. We could do 1 times 36. We could do 2 times 18. We could do 3 times 12. And we could do 4 times 9. Now, I want you to notice that we want a positive 36, but then we're going to need a negative 13 in the middle. So that means some of these numbers have to be negative. So I want you to think, how many negatives do you need if you're going to multiply and get a positive answer? If you think back to the days when you learned your sign number rules, you learned that if you did a positive times a positive, you would get a positive. You learned that if you did a negative times a negative, you would get a positive number. And if you did a positive times a negative, you would get a negative number. So it takes 2 positives or 2 negatives to get a positive answer when you're multiplying. It takes 1 negative to get a negative answer when you're multiplying. So I'm looking for a positive 36. So I know that both of these answers, both of these numbers, excuse me, would have to be negative in order to make my 36 a positive. So negative 1 times negative 36, negative 2 times negative 18, negative 3 times negative 12, negative 4 times negative 9. It's going to take 2 negative numbers in my multiplication problem to make that 36 a positive. Now again here, looking at these choices, which one seems most likely to get you negative 13 as your middle term? Well, for me, that looks like that would have to be the negative 4 and the negative 9. So that's the guess I'm going to make. I'm going to guess that out of these 4 combinations, I need to use a negative 4 and a negative 9 to get what I want. So there's my guess. This is my multiplication guess. So now I check it. So starting with my x times x is x squared. That's a good start. X times the negative 9 would get me a negative 9x. Negative 4 times x would get me a negative 4x. And then finally, negative 4 times negative 9 would get me positive 36. When I combine my like terms, negative 9 minus 4, I'm going to get x squared minus 13x plus 36, which is what I wanted. So I now know that the guess that I made is correct. Now I do need to say that later on, when we make this a value not a 1, when we have a coefficient out here that's not a 1, that picking your two numbers from over here won't be as easy as it is right now. I won't be able to say, okay, I'm looking for 13, which numbers will get me that 13? But for today, let that kind of guide you. But notice, you are going to have to think about what signs to use. When there are negatives in your problem, you're going to need some negative numbers over here. And how many negative numbers you need over here will depend on whether this number is a positive number or a negative number. Hope that's making sense. If not, you'll let me know. All right, let's try another one like that. Let's try x squared minus 15x plus 56. So get set up, get ready to guess. And notice again how my problem has a negative in it. So that means I'm going to need some negative numbers this time. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. All right, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to start with this first term of x squared. For today, always there will be only one way to get it, x times x. So we're going to put an x in each set of our parentheses. Now we pop down here to the end and we see that we're looking for numbers that will multiply to give us a positive 56. Well, I know I could do 1 times 56. I know I could do 2 times 28. I could do 4 times 14. I could do 7 times 8. Now, again, I'm looking for negative 15x as my middle term. So some of these numbers over here are going to have to be negative. The question is how many of them? Well, if I'm going to get a positive 56, then I'm going to need two negative numbers to make that happen. So a negative 1 times a negative 56 would give me positive 56. A negative 2 times a negative 28 would get me a positive 56. A negative 4 times a negative 14, a negative 7 times a negative 8. If I'm going to get a positive, then I'm going to have two negative numbers in each of these combinations to make that happen. It takes a negative times a negative to make a positive. All right, so now I'm looking for negative 15 in the middle. When I examine these choices, this combination right here seems most likely to get me that negative 15. So I'm going to put a negative 7 and a negative 8 into my parentheses, and here is my guess. So now let's check it. So starting with x, we'll do x times x and get x squared. We'll do x times negative 8 and get negative 8x. We'll do negative 7 times x and get negative 7x. And we'll do negative 7 times negative 8 and get a positive 56. Combine these two like terms, negative 8 minus 7, and you'll have x squared minus 15x plus 56, which matches what we started with perfectly. So this is my factored answer. So when negatives get involved, just take some time to think about how many negatives do I need to make this work out. Now, let's try this next. Let's try x squared minus 5x minus 24. Now again, when I'm looking at this problem, I'm going to need some negative numbers because there's lots of negative going on here. All right, so I've got myself set up. Let's go to our first term and let's think about what will give us x squared. Easy there, x times x. So we put an x in each set of parentheses. This time around, I want you to notice that for our last number, we're looking for a negative 24. So let's first think about numbers that will multiply to give us 24. We could do 1 times 24. We could do 2 times 12. We could do 3 times 8. We could do 4 times 6. But I want you to notice that all of these multiplication problems will give me positive 24 as the answer, and I'm looking for negative. So how many negative numbers do I need in my problem if I'm going to get a negative answer? Well, I need one. I need a negative number times a positive number in order to get negative 24. So I could do negative 1 times 24 and get negative 24. But keep in mind, you could also do a positive 1 times a negative 24 and get that result. I could do a negative 2 times a positive 12, and that would get me a negative 24. But I could also do a positive 2 times a negative 12. So notice, since this time around we only need one negative number, that negative could be assigned to either of the numbers in these multiplication problems. So I could do a negative 3 times a positive 8 and get negative 24, or a positive 3 times a negative 8. A negative 4 times a positive 6, or a positive 4 times a negative 6. So the question for you always on that last number is, how many negatives do I need? Do I need 2? Do I need 1? Do I need none? That's what you need to be thinking about. So now keep in mind we're looking for a negative 5 in the middle. I don't think these combinations are going to get us a negative 5. I also don't think these will. I don't think negative 4 and 6 seem likely to get me a negative 5. These are the combinations where I can see the potential to get a negative 5. Negative 3 plus 8 would be a positive 5. 3 plus negative 8 would be a negative 5. So this is the one I think I'll try. So I'm going to guess that my multiplication problem is going to have to be x plus 3 times x minus 8. That's my guess. And now I will go through the check and see if I'm right. So x times x, x squared. X times negative 8, negative 8x. 3 times x, 3x. 3 times negative 8, negative 24. And when I combine my like terms, negative 8x plus 3x, I get x squared minus 5x minus 24. It checks, so I am correct. This was the right guess. That is my multiplication problem. So always when you're over here guessing for this last number, look at whether that number is positive or negative and see how many negatives you might need over here. If that last number is positive, so I'm talking about this number right here, if he's positive, then you either need 2 positives or 2 negatives to get that. If that last number is negative, you need positive and negative, or negative and positive. You need 1 negative, in other words, to get that. And that's all, again, based on your sign rules that you learned for numbers a long time ago. All right, let's try this one now. Let's try x squared plus 5x minus 36. Let's give this one a try. All right, so my first term, x squared, when I think about it, there's only one way to produce that, and that's an x times an x. So I'm going to put an x in each set of parentheses. And then I go down here to the end to my negative 36. Numbers that I can multiply to get 36 would be 1 times 36, 2 times 18, 3 times 12, 4 times 9, 6 times 6. Now, all of these combinations I have written down will give me a positive 36. If I want it to be negative, then I would need one number in each problem to be negative. So now, which combination over here seems most likely to get you a 5? Well, out of all of these, right here is the one that to me seems most likely to give me a 5. If I do a negative 4 with a positive 9, that would get me a positive 5, which is what I wanted. So I'm going to try this. I'm going to guess that this is going to have to be x minus 4, so use a negative 4, and x plus 9. Use the positive 9. And let's see if that works out. Let's check it. So x times x is x squared. X times 9 is 9x. Negative 4 times x is negative 4x. And negative 4 times 9 is negative 36. Like terms, 9x minus 4x is 5x, so x squared plus 5x minus 36 checks out. And so I know now that my guess was correct, and that is my answer. The hardest part on this, and this I can tell you from experience having taught this for many years, the hardest part on this for most people is getting those signs right. So I want you to really focus on that as you do these problems. When you're guessing, excuse me, for that last number, think about how many negatives you need. All right, let's do one last one. Let's do one last one, and then I'm going to let you try some of these. Let's do x squared minus x minus 30. All right, let's get him all set up and ready to go. We start out at the beginning with x squared. We know there's one way to make that happen, x times x. So there's the beginning of my multiplication problem. Put one x in each set of parentheses. Now I'm down here at the end, and my number at the end is a negative 30. So I know I could do 1 times 30. I could do 2 times 15. I could do 3 times 10. I could do 5 times 6. And I think that covers it. Now, all of these multiplication problems that I've written will give me positive 30 as the answer. If I want negative 30 as the answer, then I need one number in each of these problems to be negative. So I could do negative 1 times 30, negative 2 times 15, negative 3 times 10, negative 5 times 6, and vice versa. Now I want you to notice this time that we want negative 1x here in the middle. So which combination seems most likely to get you to a 1, a negative 1? Well, this one seems most likely. But I want you to notice that if we did a negative 5 and a positive 6, negative 5 plus 6, we would get positive 1. So that tells me that maybe I don't want that 5 to be the negative number. Maybe I want it to be the 6 instead. So I'm going to guess x plus 5, x minus 6 as my factored answer. I'm going to guess. That's my guess. And now I check. So I want you to notice how I'm using what's up here to kind of help guide me in my choice over here. So x times x is x squared. X times negative 6 is negative 6x. 5 times x is 5x. And 5 times 6, negative 6 is negative 30. When I do negative 6x plus 5x, I get negative 1x. X squared minus x minus 30 is what I wanted. So this would be my factored answer. Now, you're going to try some of these on your own today. If you are having any trouble whatsoever, then please let me know. If you are a hybrid B student, then you will be in class on Thursday and we'll be working on this more then. So you will have a chance to ask questions in person if you need to. But you folks who are 100% virtual, if you're having any trouble whatsoever with this, let me know tomorrow and we can Zoom on Wednesday and get that straightened out for you. But the signs, like I said, are the most important thing. So give these a try. Let me know if you have any questions whatsoever.